They said some films were so dangerous, even Hollywood wanted them erased from memory. But what happens when a movie is too bold for its own time? When art dares to challenge power, morality, or the very system that created it? Today, we're peeling back the velvet curtain on the 15 banned films that haunted old Hollywood forever. Which notorious classic still sends shivers through the industry, and which one nearly brought the studio system to its knees? Stay tuned. Not every shadow hides what you expect. The Outlaw, 1943. If there's one film that epitomized Hollywood's war with censorship, it was Howard Hughes's The Outlaw. On the surface, it's just another Western, dusty towns, gunfighters, and a cattle feud. But for audiences in 1943, The Outlaw wasn't about the story. It was about Jane Russell. Howard Hughes, the eccentric mogul and master provocateur, knew exactly how to push buttons. He engineered a publicity machine around Russell's cleavage, designing a custom bra to accentuate her curves and ensuring every poster and every gossip column turned the film into a scandal before a single frame hit theaters. Censors were outraged. The Production Code Authority, the self-appointed moral police of Hollywood, demanded changes before they'd even consider letting the film play. Hughes did what he did best. He played a long game of chess with the system, alternately cutting scenes, re-editing, and then sneaking them back in. He even orchestrated a fake protest outside a Los Angeles theater, planting picketers to draw crowds and drum up controversy. When the Catholic Legion of Decency got involved, the film's notoriety exploded. The Outlaw was banned in several cities and states. Its release delayed for years. Some theaters risked it anyway, resulting in packed houses and headlines. The press dubbed it the movie too hot for Hollywood. The ban only stoked public curiosity, and when The Outlaw finally did get a wider release, it sold out wherever it played. The irony? The film itself is almost tame by today's standards. But in the 1940s, the mere suggestion of sexuality, especially when wrapped in Hughes's relentless marketing, was enough to send shockwaves through the industry. Jane Russell, virtually unknown before The Outlaw, became an overnight sensation, her image forever tied to both Hollywood's golden age and its most infamous battle over what could and couldn't be shown on screen. The film's legend only grew over the decades, a symbol of how moral outrage can turn a B-movie into a box office phenomenon. The Outlaw didn't just haunt Hollywood, it changed the rules of the game, making scandal a powerful marketing tool, and proving that sometimes a ban is the best publicity of all. Scarface, 1932. In the early 1930s, Hollywood's love affair with the gangster film reached its fever pitch. But Scarface, directed by Howard Hawks and produced by Howard Hughes, didn't just flirt with controversy. It embraced it with a Tommy gun in each hand. Loosely inspired by the real-life rise and fall of Al Capone, Scarface was so brutally violent and morally ambiguous that even seasoned crime reporters left the theater shaken. For many, it wasn't just entertainment. It was an outright threat to the social order. Censors across the country were horrified. The original cut of Scarface depicted a Chicago riddled with bullets, corruption, and unchecked power. The film's protagonist, Tony Camonte, wasn't punished for his crimes in the original ending. He reveled in them. Italian-American groups protested the film's ethnic stereotypes, while religious leaders warned that Scarface would corrupt a generation of moviegoers. The result? A full-blown censorship battle that played out in headlines nationwide. Multiple states outright banned Scarface. Others demanded drastic edits, including a title change, Scarface, the Shame of the Nation, and a new ending where Tony meets a morally instructive demise. Howard Hughes, ever the rebel, pulled the film from circulation rather than submit it to censors. He refused to let his vision be watered down, ensuring Scarface became infamous long before it ever saw wide release. The backlash had a profound impact on Hollywood. The scandal surrounding Scarface helped usher in the draconian production code of 1934, which would police film content for decades. Yet, for all its controversy, Scarface was a smash hit wherever it played. Its gritty realism and relentless pace thrilling audiences and inspiring generations of filmmakers. When Hughes finally re-released the film, posthumously and with some cuts restored, critics and audiences alike marveled at its raw energy and uncompromising vision. Today, Scarface is seen as a landmark of the genre, a film that dared to show America's dark side and paid the price for its honesty. Its legend endures, not just as a cautionary tale, but as proof that some stories are too powerful to be silenced, no matter how hard Hollywood tries to bury them. Freaks, 1932. Few films in Hollywood's golden era cast a shadow as long as Todd Browning's Freaks. Released in 1932, it was meant to be MGM's next big shocker. An inside look at circus life, told through the eyes of sideshow performers. Browning, fresh off the success of Dracula, envisioned a story that humanized the other, the so-called freaks that mainstream society feared and shunned. But what landed on the screen was so disturbing, so radically different from anything Hollywood had produced, that it sent the industry into a tailspin. Freaks featured real-life sideshow artists with physical disabilities, casting them not as objects of horror, but as the sympathetic heart of the story. The villains were able-bodied, greedy, and cruel. The film's most infamous sequence, when the freaks unite for a chilling, rain-soaked revenge, left audiences stunned and studio executives terrified. Test screenings provoked panic. One woman sued MGM, claiming the film caused her to miscarry. Studio bosses slashed 30 minutes from Browning's original cut, but the damage was done. MGM tried to bury Freaks, pulling it from circulation and essentially blacklisting Browning from major studio projects. In the UK, the film was banned for over 30 years. In the US, it was restricted to exploitation circuits. Critics at the time were merciless, calling it depraved, grotesque, and an insult to Hollywood's image. But over time, Freaks achieved cult status. The counterculture of the 1960s embraced its message of outsider solidarity. Directors from Truffaut to Lynch cited it as an influence. Today, it's hailed as a misunderstood masterpiece, a film far ahead of its time, both in style and spirit. Yet for Browning and many involved, the fallout was permanent. The bans and backlash didn't just kill careers. They left scars on the industry's collective psyche. Freaks proved that even in Hollywood's glittering golden age, there were stories so raw and real that the world simply wasn't ready to face them. Babyface, 1933. In the pre-code era, before Hollywood censors slammed the doors on sex and moral ambiguity, Babyface was the grenade tossed into the system. Barbara Stanwyck stars as Lily Powers, a woman who, ground down by life and abuse, decides to use her beauty and cunning to climb the corporate ladder by seducing her way to the top. For 1933, this was more than provocative. It was revolutionary. The film's open depiction of female sexuality and agency shocked audiences and infuriated moral watchdogs. As soon as the studio submitted Babyface for review, the censors recoiled. The original version was so bold in its themes of manipulation, sex, and Nietzschean philosophy that the production code office tried to shut it down. They demanded heavy edits, cutting suggestive scenes, changing dialogue, and even tacking on a moral ending where Lily, after her rise, is forced to settle for a humble life. But by the time the recut hit theaters, rumors about the film's lost footage had already created a legend. Some states and cities banned it outright. Others allowed only the watered-down version. The controversy surrounding Babyface was so intense that it played a role in ushering in the stricter enforcement of the production code just months later. But the legend of the film and the uncut version only grew over time. For decades, the original cut was thought lost, adding to the film's mystique as a forbidden classic. When it was finally rediscovered in the Library of Congress in 2004, critics hailed it as a masterpiece of pre-code Hollywood, one that dared to show a woman refusing to play by society's rules. Babyface haunted Hollywood as the film that went too far and paid the price. It stands today as a milestone in film history, a work that proved the power of taboo and the enduring appeal of a scandal that censors couldn't erase, no matter how hard they tried. The Children's Hour, 1961. Some films haunted Hollywood not just because of what they showed, but because of what they dared to say. William Wyler's The Children's Hour stands as one of the boldest examples. Released in 1961, this psychological drama, starring Audrey Hepburn and Shirley MacLaine, was based on Lillian Hellman's 1934 stage play, which had already been branded indecent and banned in several cities. Even decades later, the film adaptation was surrounded by a sense of risk, controversy, and taboo. Set in a girls' boarding school, the story follows two teachers, Karen and Martha, whose lives are destroyed by a student's malicious rumor that the women are in a lesbian relationship. In 1961, Hollywood was still firmly in the grip of moral watchdogs, and any direct treatment of homosexuality was forbidden by the production code. Earlier, an attempted 1936 film version had been forced to erase any mention of the lesbian theme, but Wyler refused to look away. In The Children's Hour, the accusations and the devastating fallout are laid bare, exposing the destructive power of lies, bigotry, and societal repression. Censors were swift to act. The film was banned in several American states, including Tennessee and Florida, and faced outright prohibition in countries like Canada and Ireland. Advertisements were limited, and theaters hesitated to screen it, fearing backlash from religious and civic groups. Even in places where it wasn't officially banned, The Children's Hour was often boycotted or relegated to art house theaters. Its cast and director faced pointed questions about why they'd risk their reputations for such a dangerous subject. Yet, the film's critical acclaim was undeniable. MacLaine's performance, in particular, brought a new depth and heartbreak to Martha's struggle with her feelings and the consequences of a society that cannot accept her. For many viewers, the film was their first encounter with the emotional devastation wrought by rumor and intolerance. Today, The Children's Hour is remembered as a watershed moment in Hollywood's history, one that signaled the slow crumbling of the production code and paved the way for more honest, courageous storytelling. Its legacy still lingers as a haunting reminder that sometimes the most dangerous thing in Hollywood isn't what's on the screen. It's the silence that once surrounded it. The Moon is Blue, 1953. By the 1950s, Hollywood was supposed to have settled into the straitjacket of the production code, a set of rules so strict, even the word pregnant was forbidden. But Otto Preminger's The Moon is Blue crashed through those boundaries like a sledgehammer. On the surface, it's a romantic comedy, William Holden and David Niven both vying for the attention of a headstrong young woman. But what set it apart wasn't just witty banter. It was the frank, unblushing talk about sex, virginity, and seduction. From the start, the censors were aghast. The script dared to use words like virgin, seduce, and mistress. Even though there was no actual sex on screen, the frankness of the dialogue was considered scandalous. The Production Code Administration refused to grant the film its seal of approval, and the Catholic Legion of Decency slapped it with a condemned rating. Many states and cities banned the film entirely. The outcry was enormous, but Preminger and United Artists fought back. They released The Moon is Blue without approval, betting that audiences would flock to see what all the fuss was about. They were right. The controversy only made the film more popular, drawing crowds who wanted to see the naughty comedy the censors didn't want them to watch. The Moon is Blue became a box office success, and its battle with the censors set a crucial precedent for artistic freedom in Hollywood. Over time, it helped chip away at the power of the production code, paving the way for more open conversations about sex and relationships on screen. But its shadow lingered for years. For some, The Moon is Blue represented everything wrong with Hollywood's changing morals. For others, it was a beacon of progress. Either way, it forced the industry to confront its own taboos and proved that sometimes a banned film could change Hollywood forever. The Man with the Golden Arm, 1955. Frank Sinatra's The Man with the Golden Arm didn't just push boundaries, it smashed them. Released in 1955, this drama tackled a subject Hollywood had always tiptoed around: drug addiction. Sinatra played Frankie Machine, a talented jazz drummer and recovering heroin addict, struggling to stay clean after his release from prison. Otto Preminger, never one to flinch from controversy, directed with a raw, unfiltered approach that was as shocking to censors as it was to audiences. The film was gritty, unapologetic, and far from the sanitized stories Hollywood usually delivered. The trouble began before a single ticket was sold. The Production Code Authority, the final word on what could and couldn't be shown in American theaters, flatly refused to grant the film its seal of approval. Their code explicitly forbade the depiction of drug addiction, and they weren't about to bend for Sinatra, no matter how big a star he was. Major theater chains were nervous, fearing backlash from religious groups and community watchdogs. But Preminger refused to back down. He released the film without the code's approval, triggering a storm of debate that reverberated through Hollywood. Some cities banned the film outright, and others tried to block its advertising. Despite the pushback, The Man with the Golden Arm became a box office sensation, and critics hailed Sinatra's raw, vulnerable performance as a revelation. The film's success was more than just commercial. It marked a turning point in Hollywood history, signaling the beginning of the end for the production code's iron grip. The battle over The Man with the Golden Arm emboldened other filmmakers to tackle difficult, taboo subjects, paving the way for the more honest, challenging films of the late 1950s and 1960s. Today, The Man with the Golden Arm is recognized as a groundbreaking work, remembered not only for Sinatra's career-defining role, but for its fearless confrontation of society's darkest corners. In facing censorship head-on and refusing to blink, this film changed the rules of the game, haunting Hollywood with the message that art couldn't be silenced, no matter how uncomfortable the truth might be. Song of the South, 1946. There are few films Disney would rather erase from its history than Song of the South. Released in 1946, the film was supposed to be a technical marvel, a live-action and animated blend featuring the now iconic Zip-a-dee-doo-dah. Instead, it became one of the most controversial movies in Hollywood, instantly sparking protest and condemnation for its racial insensitivity and romanticized portrayal of the Reconstruction-era South. Song of the South tells the story of young Johnny and his relationship with Uncle Remus, a black sharecropper who entertains the boy with folktales about Brer Rabbit. But critics immediately slammed the movie for its depiction of black characters as happy, subservient, and content with their place in society. Civil rights groups, including the NAACP, denounced the film for perpetuating dangerous stereotypes and for glossing over the brutal realities of slavery and segregation. The fact that James Baskett, who played Uncle Remus, wasn't even allowed to attend the film's Atlanta premiere due to segregation laws only underscored the hypocrisy at the heart of the production. Protests erupted in several cities, with many theaters refusing to screen the film. Internationally, some countries banned it outright, while others imposed restrictions. Disney, sensitive to the changing social climate, quietly pulled Song of the South from circulation, never releasing it on home video in the United States. Yet, despite its technical achievements and the enduring popularity of its music and animated characters, Song of the South has become a phantom in the Disney vault, a work so problematic that even mentioning it is enough to spark debate. For decades, it haunted the studio's reputation, serving as a cautionary tale about how the power of cinema can reinforce social harms just as easily as it can inspire. It stands today as a reminder that Hollywood's past is littered with stories that, once unleashed, can never truly be buried. Citizen Cain, 1941. It's hard to imagine now, but when Citizen Cain premiered in 1941, it was dangerously close to being buried forever by the very power it sought to expose. Orson Welles, barely in his mid-20s and already infamous for his War of the Worlds broadcast, unleashed a film that didn't just break the rules, it set them on fire. Citizen Cain was a thinly veiled takedown of newspaper magnate William Randolph Hearst, portraying the rise and lonely fall of a tycoon whose name wasn't Cain, but might as well have been. Hearst recognized himself instantly and declared war. He used his immense media empire to silence the film, threatening theaters, attacking Welles in the press, and banning all advertising and reviews of Citizen Cain in his newspapers. Studio executives were pressured, theaters were intimidated, and there were even threats to expose Hollywood's own darkest secrets if the film saw daylight. Some theaters pulled the film entirely, and in many parts of the country, it became almost impossible to find a screening. For years, Citizen Cain existed in a kind of cinematic purgatory, a masterpiece everyone whispered about, but few actually saw. Despite the blockade, the film earned critical acclaim, even winning an Oscar for Best Original Screenplay. But its initial box office was disappointing, and Welles's career in Hollywood never truly recovered from the backlash. Only decades later did Citizen Cain achieve its reputation as the greatest film ever made, its influence on storytelling, editing, and cinematography becoming undeniable. The legend of Citizen Cain isn't just about innovation. It's a cautionary tale about the dangers of power and the lengths the rich and influential will go to bury uncomfortable truths. The bans and boycotts didn't kill it. They gave it a new kind of immortality, making its haunted legacy as much about the real-life drama behind the scenes as the fiction on screen. Gone with the Wind, 1939. Gone with the Wind is one of the most celebrated films in Hollywood history, but its legacy is just as haunted by controversy as it is decorated with Oscars. When it premiered in 1939, David O. Selznick's lavish Civil War epic was an instant sensation. Audiences lined up for blocks to witness the sweeping romance of Scarlett O'Hara and Rhett Butler, and the movie quickly became a symbol of Hollywood's golden age. Yet beneath its technicolor grandeur and record-breaking box office lies a story of bans, protests, and enduring social wounds. From its earliest days, Gone with the Wind drew fire for its depiction of the American South and its handling of race. Critics pointed out that the film romanticized plantation life, glossed over the horrors of slavery, and trafficked in racial stereotypes. While Hattie McDaniel made history as the first black actor to win an Academy Award for her role as Mammy, she was forced to sit at a segregated table at the Oscars and wasn't even allowed to attend the Atlanta premiere. Civil rights groups protested the film's release, and in some countries, including post-war Germany and the Soviet Union, the film was outright banned for its perceived endorsement of racial inequality. Over the years, screenings of Gone with the Wind continued to provoke heated debate. During the Civil Rights era, calls to ban or censor the film resurfaced, and even today, its availability often comes with contextual disclaimers about its outdated and offensive portrayals. Internationally, bans and restrictions have followed waves of social change, making the film's journey as tumultuous as the story it tells. Despite, or perhaps because of, these controversies, Gone with the Wind remains an indelible part of American cinema, both celebrated and condemned. Its legacy is a reminder that Hollywood's most iconic films often carry shadows that are impossible to ignore, and that sometimes the most beloved stories are also the most troubling. Banned, protested, and endlessly debated, Gone with the Wind continues to haunt Hollywood as both a cinematic triumph and a cautionary tale about the stories we choose to celebrate. Strange Interlude, 1932. When MGM adapted Eugene O'Neill's Pulitzer Prize-winning play, Strange Interlude, in 1932, the studio knew it was walking a razor's edge. O'Neill's stage production was already notorious for its frank depiction of extramarital affairs, pregnancy out of wedlock, and the tormented psychology of its heroine, Nina Leeds. Translating such adult themes to the big screen in the early 1930s, at the tail end of Hollywood's pre-code era, was a gamble that nearly backfired. The film's narrative revolves around Nina, who, haunted by the death of her fiancé in World War I, seeks comfort and fulfillment through a string of relationships. The original play had pushed boundaries with its internal monologues and open discussion of taboo subjects, infidelity, abortion, and mental health. MGM's version, while forced to soften some elements for the screen, still retained a level of psychological intensity and sexual frankness that was rare for its time. Censors were not amused. Strange Interlude was banned in several states and cities for its adult themes, and religious watchdogs condemned it as morally dangerous. The Hays Office, the precursor to the full Production Code Authority, demanded cuts and changes, but even the watered-down version drew criticism. Audiences in more conservative areas never saw the film at all, and its reputation as a forbidden picture only grew. Ironically, the controversy fueled public curiosity. In markets where it played, Strange Interlude became a hot ticket, with moviegoers eager to see what had gotten the censors so worked up. Over time, the film's reputation faded as the strict production code locked Hollywood down, but its legacy as one of the boldest and most banned films of the pre-code era remains. Strange Interlude proved that even in Hollywood's most glamorous years, the line between art and obscenity was thin, and crossing it could leave a mark that haunted the industry for decades. The Great Dictator, 1940. Charlie Chaplin was already an icon when he set out to make The Great Dictator, but nothing in his legendary career prepared Hollywood for the storm that followed. Released in 1940, Chaplin's first true talkie was a razor-sharp satire targeting Adolf Hitler and the rise of fascism in Europe. At a time when much of America was reluctant to criticize Nazi Germany, Chaplin's parody of Adenoid Hinkle was both a bold artistic statement and a political lightning rod. Many industry insiders warned Chaplin that mocking Hitler could provoke censorship, diplomatic fallout, or even violence. Their fears were not unfounded. The Great Dictator was banned outright in Nazi Germany, Italy, and their occupied territories, where showing the film was a crime punishable by prison. Some theaters in the United States refused to screen it out of fear of Nazi retaliation or backlash from isolationist groups. Even the British government, eager to avoid antagonizing Hitler before the war, hesitated to allow public screenings. But Chaplin persisted, funding the project himself and risking both his fortune and reputation. When The Great Dictator premiered, it was met with a mix of acclaim and outrage. Critics praised its courage, while some conservative commentators accused Chaplin of exploiting global tragedy for laughs. The film's rousing final speech, a plea for humanity in the face of tyranny, only heightened its impact. Over time, The Great Dictator was recognized as a masterpiece, proof that satire could challenge power and that Hollywood could be more than just escapist fantasy. But for years, the film's bans and boycotts served as a reminder that even comedy could be dangerous when it confronted evil. The Great Dictator endures not just as Chaplin's boldest work, but as one of Hollywood's most daring acts of defiance, an artistic stand that haunted an industry often more comfortable with silence than with speaking truth to power. Gilda, 1946. Few films from Hollywood's golden era sizzled with as much style and scandal as Gilda. Released in 1946 by Columbia Pictures, this iconic film noir is remembered not just for its moody shadows and tangled love triangles, but for the sheer, uncontainable magnetism of its star, Rita Hayworth. When Hayworth's Gilda famously tosses back her hair and performs the sultriest striptease Hollywood dared to show at the time, it wasn't just moviegoers who took notice. It was censors and governments around the globe. Directed by Charles Vidor and starring Glenn Ford alongside Hayworth, Gilda tells the story of a gambler, a casino boss, and the enigmatic woman caught between them. On the surface, it's a tale of jealousy and revenge in a smoky Buenos Aires nightclub. But underneath, it's a study in sexual tension and female autonomy, one that pushed the boundaries of what Hollywood could show. Rita Hayworth's performance, especially the now legendary "Put the Blame on Mame" number, was unlike anything American audiences had seen. With a single glove and a sultry smile, Hayworth redefined Hollywood sensuality. But while American censors trimmed dialogue and kept a wary eye on Hayworth's moves, the real firestorm erupted overseas. In Francois, Spain, Gilda was outright banned for nearly a decade, condemned for its immoral content and Hayworth's perceived indecency. Even after the ban was lifted, Spanish authorities heavily edited the film, removing scenes they considered dangerous to the nation's morals. Across South America and parts of Europe, Gilda faced similar censorship battles. Ironically, the Spanish ban only heightened Hayworth's legend, turning her into a forbidden icon and giving the film a dangerous allure it might never have had otherwise. Back in Hollywood, the scandal only added to the film's success. Gilda became a sensation, with critics and fans flocking to see the movie that had shocked the world. Hayworth's performance would haunt her own image, as the love goddess label stuck for the rest of her career, a blessing and a burden in equal measure. Today, Gilda stands as a quintessential example of how one film could stir controversy, inflame censors, and ultimately outlast the bans to become an immortal classic. Sometimes, all it takes is a glance, a glove, and a world not quite ready for what Hollywood had to offer. Salomi, 1923. Long before Hollywood had a formal code of censorship, it already had a knack for courting scandal, and few films illustrate this better than Salomi. Released in 1923, this silent adaptation of Oscar Wilde's controversial play drew both fascination and fury for its biblical subject matter and its star, Russian émigré Alla Nazimova, a Broadway legend known for her avant-garde taste and defiant spirit. The film's stylized sets, bold costumes, and theatrical acting made it visually unforgettable, but it was the sensual undertones and blasphemous themes that left censors reeling. Salomi retells the biblical story of King Herod's stepdaughter, whose infamous Dance of the Seven Veils leads to the execution of John the Baptist. The film's depiction of Salomi's eroticism and her powerful, unapologetic female sexuality was unlike anything seen in American cinema. Religious groups and conservative organizations erupted in outrage. Several U.S. states, including New York and Ohio, banned the film for its supposed sacrilege and immoral content. Local boards demanded extensive cuts, gutting the film's most provocative sequences. The controversy deepened when it became clear that Salomi was coded with queer subtext. Nazimova and many of her collaborators were part of Hollywood's early LGBTQ+ underground, and the film's sensuous, stylized approach only fueled rumors. Despite critical acclaim from some quarters, Salomi struggled to find screens, with its bans and limited distribution dooming it to box office failure in its own time. Yet, over the years, Salomi achieved cult status, rediscovered by cinephiles and scholars as an early masterpiece of camp and artistic daring. Today, it stands as a landmark in silent film, a testament to how early Hollywood pushed, and paid for pushing, the boundaries of sexuality and art. Its history as a banned and marginalized film remains a haunting reminder of how the industry policed its own image, even before the infamous Hays Code. Reefer Madness, 1936. At first glance, Reefer Madness might seem like little more than a cautionary curiosity from the 1930s, a melodramatic public service announcement warning America's youth about the perils of marijuana. But the story of its ban and legacy is a stranger tale than any of its fevered plotlines. Financed by a church group and released under various titles including Tell Your Children and Doped Youth, the film showed a series of young people spiraling into madness, violence, and ruin after a single puff of marijuana, a premise so lurid it bordered on parody. The film's hyperbolic content and sensationalist style made it a favorite target for censors. Local and state authorities across the U.S. banned or restricted screenings, citing the film's corrupting influence and supposed glorification of drug use, even though its intent was the opposite. The newly formed Production Code Office wouldn't touch it, and most major theater chains steered clear. In some states, police raided screenings and confiscated film reels. But Reefer Madness had a second life. Decades later, it was rediscovered by counterculture audiences who found its over-the-top performances and wild plotlines hilarious rather than horrifying. What began as a banned morality play became a midnight movie cult sensation in the 1970s and 1980s, embraced by a new generation for its accidental camp value. Today, Reefer Madness is more famous for being infamous, symbolizing the extremes of censorship, propaganda, and Hollywood's willingness to traffic in fear for a buck. Its journey from banned oddity to cultural icon proves that no matter how hard Hollywood tries to control the narrative, some stories just refuse to fade away. Some films vanish, but these legends refuse to be silenced, banned, censored, and condemned, yet still echo through Hollywood's golden halls. Their shadows linger, reminding us that the riskiest stories are often the ones we can't forget. Which of these forbidden classics would you dare to watch, knowing the uproar they caused? Drop your answer in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe, because in Hollywood, the stories they tried to bury are the ones still begging to be seen.